When you make a good movie, it's good forever. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review of the Apple TV Plus series, The Studio. What's the difference between a studio executive and God? God doesn't think he's a studio executive. What's up, geeks? I'm Kev, and this is the Geekcentric podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, we are a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, games, toys, and collectibles, and all things geek-centric. We got into this whole thing because we love movies, and now it's our job to break down a show that seems to simultaneously love movies while also hating the way they're made. Sound is rolling, and the entire crew is ready to pull this off in a glorious oneer. The only question is if we can get $800,000 to use a Rolling Stones song. This is our spoiler-free review for the first season of the Apple TV Plus series, The Studio. A huge thanks to our friends at Apple TV for getting us the dailies early so we can let you know if this one is worth greenlighting. The first 2 episodes are available now on Apple TV Plus, with new episodes coming your way every Wednesday. On some episodes, we run with a really small crew, and that's great for when it comes time to accept awards and give thanks. I'll be sure not to forget to thank my co-host for this show. He's the reason I got into this industry, and when I first got to town, he let me crash on his couch for 6 months. Of course, I'm talking about Sal Saperstein. Oh, no. Wait. I meant Justin Lawrence. J-Law, how's it going?
Good, man. Good. I am beyond excited to be talking about this show. It is, spoiler alert, it's phenomenal. It's honestly so great. So I'm excited that we get to talk about it too. Like you said, we're, this is why we got into podcasting, is we love movies. We also love like shows like Entourage, which were such a, peek behind the curtain of the filmmaking process. And it was cool to watch. And, this is not like that, but is like that at the same time with certain elements in place, but it's definitely a different perspective and something that feels very timely for what's going on in the industry. So it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the faces you don't see and that kind of entourage feel. So like it's definitely that like everything that encapsulates Hollywood and the movie industry, but from a very different perspective than I think we're used to seeing in a lot of ways, which makes this so fun and unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, today we are here to talk about The Studio, a new star-studded series that shows the glitz and glam, as well as the more unscrupulous inner details of the Hollywood film industry. In The Studio, Seth Rogen stars as Matt Remick, the newly appointed head of embattled Continental Studios. As movies struggle to stay alive and relevant, Matt and his core team of infighting executives battled their insecurities as they wrangled narcissistic artists and craven corporate overlords in the ever-elusive pursuit of making great films. With their power suits masking their never-ending sense of panic, every party, set visit, casting decision, marketing meeting, and award show presents them with an opportunity for glittering success or career-ending catastrophe. As someone who eats, sleeps, and breathes movies, it's Matt's job. It's the job Matt's been pursuing his whole life, and it may very well destroy him. The Studio stars Seth Rogen, Ike Barinholtz, Chase Sui Wonders, Catherine Hahn, and Catherine O'Hara, as well as a walk of fame's worth of incredible cameos. The show is directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and was written by Rogen and Goldberg, as well as Frida Perez, Alex Gregory, and Peter Hike. Justin, this show stood out to us instantly and just seemed right up our alley, as we said, not just for our love of filmmaking and the sort of behind-the-scenes storytelling that we always eat up, but because of the style of production this show offers, as well as the incredible cast, both main and supporting. And so I thought maybe we'll start there. Why don't we discuss this incredible comedic cast that we get in The Studio?
Yeah, I think from the cast perspective, let's start with Seth. I think Seth Rogen as Matt Remick is pretty much Seth Rogen running a studio. And I'm sure he'd say that there's probably some differences, or maybe he wouldn't, I don't know. But the familiarity of Seth Rogen, his comedy, his style, who he is as a person, because he's obviously very prominent in Hollywood, I think that familiarity helps to ground this series in something that is more relatable, especially given the extraordinary sort of situations. Like the whole thing is obviously very extraordinary. It's a peek behind the curtain of how movies are made, something that people don't necessarily always understand what goes into it, and have that understanding and that commitment, and that what drives people to do it. And I think that he very much is playing as Seth Rogen, who's trying to make movies, right? And he's doing it as a studio exec, and you see it in his performance, right from the start, and just how much he loves the art of storytelling.
Absolutely. I think all the characters in their own way are these like obvious nods to people that Seth and Evan have worked with in the industry over the years. And I'm sure so many of the experiences in the show, while like obviously exaggerated and over the top, there's always a grain of truth to the things happening here. And I'm sure they're able to relate to so many of these characters just from interactions that they've had. And so it really is just that much more enjoyable when for me personally, like I love Ike Barinholtz, and so he's such a wicked wingman to Seth Rogen here, and just sort of like he almost seems like he's going to be the comedic foil that everything goes wrong for, and oftentimes it's not that case. And so like watching Ike succeed over Seth is just a fun little twist on his usual parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ike is amazing. He plays like a studio agent, or a studio exec in a very classic way. But again, the situations that he finds himself in are hilarious. But I think that's what's really special about this is that yes, you have Seth Rogen, who's kind of at the center, but as much as it is about him and him as a studio exec, the real magic is the cast around him. Like you said, Ike Barinholtz is amazing. I think Chase Sue Wonders as Quinn is absolutely hilarious and has great comedic timing. And of course, like Catherine Hahn, like just she's absolute perfection. And you mentioned Catherine O'Hara, like I can't forget mentioning her, because like she's just flawless. Like she's like true royalty in this show. While the rest of the cast brings a lot of chaos and comedy, she often brings a sense of balance and sort of grounded nature. And I think it also comes from this like mentor-like presence that she has, which just adds a real sense of reality and empathy to the series. I think that when you're looking for that in this extraordinary world, even though she kind of falls into this, pits of being a studio exec and producer and having to remember the business over a client, or how to appease both, she does really add a sense of reality and empathy to this series. And I think she gets her moments to shine still comedically, throughout, because she is obviously a comedic icon. But I think what's also great too is that it's how her role in this show reflects who she's become in real life. Like I feel like the more people talk about Catherine O'Hara and as a mentor and an icon in this industry, she elevates every scene she's in this show. Like just to be there, like even if she is just there in a sort of reactionary way to do things, she's so authentic. And I think she just makes the show feel that much more special in a lot of ways. I think, again, the whole cast is just to be celebrated as being outstanding in this show.
Yeah, I think with Catherine specifically, there's probably a lot that she can relate to from her character and her own experiences. Like you said, being that sort of veteran presence, she probably is, looked up to by so many of her colleagues in the acting world whenever she's on set, especially with her rich history in comedy and improv and sort of fitting into a show like this. And so it's that kind of veteran character who's been through everything. And so now they can sort of approach any situation with we'll figure it out. We'll get through it. And, I'm sure that mirrors her real life experiences working with younger people like Chase, for instance, and all through the caveat of people we have. I want to quickly shout out Catherine Hahn, whose hair is almost as much of a character as she is, as it's like ever changing from not just episode to episode, but scene to scene, which I thought was a really funny in-joke. And she just plays everything at 10 in like the funniest ways.
Yeah, and again, I think that there's got to be a grain of realism, but over exaggeratedness too. Like she is a very charismatic character in herself. So to see this dialed up to like 100 is insane, and she's absolutely fantastic. As I guess she's the head of marketing, if I'm not mistaken. Like she markets all the movies, and just her energy, the way she tries to be pretty like youthful, right? Like with the terminology, the way she dresses, like she dresses so street that it's both amazing, and it's like, how can you get away with that in sort of professional settings? But she knows how to do it. So like again, like her style, her character alone just feels so as you said, like kind of ripped from this industry, and exaggerated on so many levels, right? Which is great. Catherine Hahn is just amazing in this show, and I think it just goes without saying. She has such a presence that theatricality comes out. I think she's just, again, like I was saying, she's just pushing it to its fullest, and she knows how to bring it back and make it still feel grounded. It doesn't feel like she's overacting in any way whatsoever.
Absolutely. It feels like a night out on the town with Catherine Hahn would be a show. I just I
It'd be cool.
like the
It'd be cool
more
to
I
hang out.
see her, the crazier her roles get. I'm just like, oh, how much of this is actually you? I hate to bring up wrestling as often as I do, but it's the old adage in the business that the most successful characters are the people who take themselves and just dial it up.
Mhm.
Stone Cold Steve Austin was very much that person, but not he
Extreme.
wasn't
Yeah.
going to actually beat his boss up and everything.
Sure.
But yeah, he just turned himself. And then Dwayne Johnson, I think, is probably not just the best example, but the most well-known example of somebody who took their own personality and went, how can I make this work? Dial it all the way up. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the characters we see in this show are very much doing that. And I think that goes for the unbelievable cameos. I know we don't want to get too much into the specifics and spoil those because it's so fun just going from episode to episode going, oh my God, look, oh my God, look, oh my God, look, oh my God, look. And 95% of them play themselves in these exaggerated, ridiculous, off the cuff, like, oh, there's no way they're that person in real life.
Sure.
And I think
Sure.
they're having so much fun doing that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They you can see that they're having fun, but like again, you can't tell a story about Hollywood without some real Hollywood star power, and this show does not miss that. The studio definitely delivers. Again, like you said, we don't want to spoil anything, and there's trailers out. The first two episodes are already out, so you might have already seen the first two and seen some of those cameos. But let's just say it's awesome to see how many people in the industry jumped in on this. All of the different characters we see from all over the industry, they play exaggerated versions of themselves, like you said, and you can really tell that they're just having a blast. Like I think they get to lean into sort of the expectation or the preconceived idea of what people think they are, or how people think they act, and they get to really, again, like you said, just dial it up and be super crazy. I think it just adds a layer of hilarity to this entire show. It just fits the show's tone so well, and like, to be completely honest, like what's really cool is just seeing who's in this show and realizing how they're all connected to Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg in one way or another. It just feels like it's a project made by friends with friends, which just makes it even more fun to watch. And like these cameos, they aren't just for show. They actually help raise the stakes of some of these ridiculous situations happening on screen. I think the cameos are just, there's such a caveat to this whole thing really feeling that much more elevated in terms of like its story and where it's taking place.
Well, and given a show where we're seeing how things are sort of produced from the very start of an idea all the way through, this show must have made the rounds through Hollywood as it was getting developed, because not only are there cameos where people are main characters or integral plot points of certain episodes, but there are like literal blink and you might miss them cameos where people are kind of like not even in focus in the background. And it's to get certain stars and you're like, oh, that is actually who they're saying it is, and you can't even almost tell that it's them. Like, people were just that willing to be a part of this that they didn't care if they were on screen for 5 seconds. It was actually them, and that was even cooler than some of the more like heavily supporting cameos that we got, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes me wonder if we get a season 2, how big they could go with some of those cameos.
Absolutely. But I think, again, this show is a love letter to Hollywood, and so people probably really appreciate that. But it's not just, a love letter to Hollywood in its storytelling, which we will get to. It's also a love letter in its stylistic approach to telling the story.
Yes.
Rogan and Goldberg do such an incredible job adapting and adjusting their style to meet the thematic demands of each particular episode, while also bouncing from genre to genre depending on the focus of each episode. Like, they really showed their range in the director's chair for this show, in that it's not just a pure comedy. I mean, it's always funny, but they're also doing really impressive like genre things, like filming certain things to depict a film noir or a detective story or a beautiful love story. Like, it looks incredible and is constantly changing and adapting.
Yeah, I think the cinematography, there's two aspects for me. It's the cinematography and it's the music. So like the cinematography in this show is next level. I think Adam Newport Barra, like, he just brings such a beautiful and very cinematic quality to this show. It genuinely looks like a Hollywood film, like every episode. I think the visuals, they have that grainy, muted tone that you would come to know from like some of these like more filmic stories, but there's this incredible sharpness and accuracy and focus, and it just adds a more grounded, almost documentary feel to the experience of the story. So it's almost like a juxtaposition. It is a comedy. It feels exaggerated, but it is shot in a very authentic, real way that, when some of these comedic moments happen, it's kind of like, it's awkward. It's like Office, not to the extreme of Office, but like it's Office awkward to a certain degree. But like what really stands out too about the camera work, and that this show really leans heavily in, is these long continuous shots, often called a oneer. There is an episode 2 is called The Oneer. If you know what that is in the industry, it's a one take. And if you know what that episode's going to, if you know that, then you know what that episode's going to be about. And the situation around it is hilarious. But that one episode is just, it just makes a whole thing out of it. But in reality, that style is baked into the DNA of this show. It really keeps the fluid pacing, really pulls you into the world. I just love how you could start by tracking a character, then meets another character. Now we're tracking with that character. And there are cuts there in those instances, but the way they make it feel like you're in those situations, it's so well done. And I think, yeah, it just pulls you into this world. It makes you feel like you're right there with these characters. And again, it's not just a stylistic choice. It plays a huge role in how you're experiencing this story. And I think that they just nailed it. That helps to kind of almost shift it out of this whole realm of just being a comedy, right? It's a sort of juxtaposition of styles, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up The Office, and I totally see what you mean without wanting to suggest that it's in the style of The Office. But I bet you if you ran a stopwatch over the 10 episodes, that the camera stays still for like less than a minute over the entire series. Like, the camera is always moving and the characters are always moving. And so you're
Hollywood,
always
baby.
moving from one meeting to another
Yeah.
meeting to, I got to get here and got to get over here. And now this is happening. And like that frenetic pace just adds so much stakes to what's going on that you like I was wondering when I was going to say it, and I'll say, if you're watching this after this review and the show hasn't come out yet, take your time, watch it week to like start right away. Go watch it right now. Honestly, like we love this show, but like enjoy watching it week to week, because I did find that binging 10 episodes in 2 days, like I was exhausted. It's like kind of exhausting viewing. It's so stressful, so high stakes. And again, because the camera's never stopping and everything, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
I think that all works to talk about what the Hollywood industry is, right? Like that is it. Like I don't think that they're, trying to make this feel like it's sunshines and rainbows making a movie. It's the best thing ever. It is a stressful business. And that's even like really called into question when in a specific episode with Seth. And I absolutely love that one. I think another part of that frenetic energy, that pacing, that sort of stress that you feel is the music, which is so well composed, featuring the compositional work of Antonio Sanchez. I have to say, like, the music is almost a character in itself. It's got this classic big band vibe that feels straight out of Hollywood. It's just super classic. It instantly sets the tone. But what makes it a real standout in its dynamic is like you said, that frantic score, how it just cranks up the tension and really hits moments in making each situation feel even more chaotic and stressful. And at the same time, it knows when to lean into the comedy and almost like wink at the audience in certain instances where it's like, just a drum roll. And I'm just like, oh, that's clever, right? Like, it's just so well done. So, you got great cinematography, you got great music, and the music is just, it's not background, right? It feels like a character, just like the camera feels like a character. Like, we are characters watching this story. So it just elevates this whole behind the scenes Hollywood energy, and it just makes everything feel more immersive, right? And even though it's obviously fiction, it helps to really bring you in. And I agree. I think that I kind of broke it up a little bit, but you're right. There's a couple episodes that really run stressful back to back, and that sort of chaotic energy can be a lot. So yeah, if you are going to watch this, appreciate and enjoy the week to week. And I think that's another great thing of just, highlighting Apple and what they're doing is they're really leaning into this idea of week to week. They might give you 2 or 3 episodes to kind of, set the tone, but then they want you to kind of come in week to week and have some time to sit with those episodes. This is sort of like us converting back to the old days where it was like week to week and kind of breaking free of this binge all at once. We obviously do it for the purpose of review. I think in any situation, we would probably appreciate spacing things out sometimes, right? If we had more time with it and we could watch 2 or 3 episodes over the course of 2 weeks, you know what I mean? Or, 10 episodes, over the course of 2 weeks, it might be a lot more digestible and we get more of that sense of how each episode sits. But yeah, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy that week to week. You'll have that time to break until the next chaotic situation hits.
There's so many jokes and so many like incredible moments that like getting that chance to appreciate them and not having them almost run into each other, it would be so nice. Now, the thing about this show is that each episode is so different from the last while still telling this coherent story. It was such a cool blend that it never does feel the same, right? And so you can at least separate in your mind, oh, that was episode 4, that was episode 8, whatever it is. But no, I just think there's one part where Seth's character is just like, I'm so tired. And I was like, I hear you, Matt. I feel how tired you are. And I think the show in that sense, it's really cool how you like relate to his character because you're like, you physically feel because of the style of the camera work, the music and everything that goes into it.
You feel tired.
You feel his journey so much. Like that's so well done. But the story itself is one of frenetic and impassioned adoration while simultaneously loathing for the Hollywood movie system. In a lot of ways, it's critical of the way big budget movies are churned out. And I think that comes from just a passion for making real great movies. It focuses on the highs and lows of the process and gives viewers a glimpse of what it's like to work for a big budget studio throughout the entire process of making a movie, from inception to essentially the big premiere. So what did you think of the overall story?
Listen, at the core of this the studio is a workplace comedy. It just so happens that this workplace comedy is a Hollywood studio. So the setup makes it feel incredibly meta, especially given that we're watching it on a streaming platform, right? About movies being made for the theaters that they are often fighting to try to get in theaters. So it's like there's a whole meta quality there. And I think that self-awareness really works for this show. And whether you're a fan of filmmaking or just the movie industry in general, it offers, as I was saying before, an honest and hilarious behind the scenes look at what goes into making movies. And I think that has everything to do with the fact that much of this is pulled from Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg's real life experience in Hollywood. And obviously some moments feel totally over the top, like he'll get there, but the best part is how it feels somewhat plausibly believable at times too, right? Like it just makes it feel that much funnier in that you're like, I could totally see that coming up in a studio meeting. And just like I was saying about Seth's performance, you know, the same can be said about the writing here and the sort of tone. If you're familiar with his past work and Evan Goldberg's past work and their collaboration together, because they've worked together for many, many years, you know who they are, you know what you're in for. But that's not a bad thing. This isn't a rehash of something that's been done before. It's fresh, it's super sharp, and it's got Seth and Evan's signature charm all over it. It really does. So I think this story, it's not even as much of a story as a chronicle. It's, you know, it's very much following these characters in this industry, which is why I reference something like Office or a workplace comedy. But there is this obviously aesthetically and stylistic element that helps elevate it to feel much different from any of those things. So yeah, the story is what kept me really engaged and kept me interested. And each situation, each episode is not necessarily entirely connected to the last, but there's elements that trickle over from previous episodes into other ones, and I appreciated that. It just felt like I was spending a day in the life of, you know, of these characters within this world. So yeah, it's so good. It's worth tuning in, and I'm so excited to hear what people have to say about as we get through more and more episodes.
Well, speaking of that, you know, the show does really have a coherent story that trickles its way from start to finish, while also bringing up these, you know, unique episodic almost hurdles and obstacles that Matt and his team have to get through episode by episode. You know, I almost compare it to like you're looking at, and it's kind of relevant to the show when you get to a particular episode, but it was kind of like looking at the upcoming slate of a movie studio, and you see all these different genre offerings that they have coming out over a year. So it's you're looking at this one studio that's trying to make all these different movies for all these different people, and the struggle of finding the right balance and the unique challenge of making all these different movies on one movie. It's an issue with the director, on another it's an issue with the writing, the casting, whatever it may be. You get to see a different sort of angle at the difficulties that there are in bringing movies to the big screen. And then this singular narrative sort of carries through. Did you have a favorite episode, or is there one that you're most looking forward to our listeners seeing and the world seeing and kind of getting to see their reaction to it?
You know, I'll give you something else other than all of them, because like literally every single episode is fantastic. I do think episode 9, when we get towards the finale, is really, really great. It's a lot of fun. It feels very classic Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg in its sort of situational dynamic. But I think episode 2, which is out now, go watch it. I think that one really does, again, like I said, it was a sort of tone setter along with episode 1. And that's why those two, I'm so glad that they released them together, because it really does set the tone for what this show is. It kind of introduces the comedic vibes very, very well. And I also think that stylistically, like we were talking with episode 2 being called The Oneer, it really does highlight how the show is going to be different from the other traditional, shows of its sort of style and genre. But yeah, I think episode 9, I'm going to go with episode 9. At this point, episode 4 was pretty good too. They're all really good though. Honestly, like it's hard to pick. I think, yeah, they all just fit really, really well.
100%. So much I want to sort of latch onto there. Yeah, I think them releasing episode 1 and 2 is so smart, because not only do you get the tone of the show in the first episode, but then you see how it can be so different and yet the same show, just between episodes 1 and 2. And then as you continue on, episode 3 brings you back to the main storyline, but also drives a new and is filmed differently and feels different. And yeah, it's just each episode's so unique. I will say, without saying which episode it is, there's a really fun look at award show, which any regular listeners know is such a jam for me and for the whole Geekcentric team. And so it's a really fun, different look at the kind of world of celebrity award shows that is so much fun. There's honestly an episode that's a tribute to some aspect of the business, all the way through, the season. As a marketing guy, there's an episode driven towards marketing stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god, that's. I literally went to agencies that were like doing this, and it's so spot on. Like they're so in touch with how movies are made from every different aspect, and it's just such a fun thing for fans to get to see done in a really fun way. But I think finally it's time for the climactic shot of this episode. We're going to give our final thoughts and scores for the show. Today we'll be doing so on a scale of 1 to 5 old school Hollywood buffets.
Awesome. Like I don't know if anyone can tell, but I honestly think that this show is a brilliant blend of sharp comedy, incredible performances, and just a spot on commentary on the Hollywood machine. You know, the show's cinematography, with its sort of elevated look and feel, gives such a real life cinematic quality that pulls you into this world, and it's frenetic and it's hilarious. The music feels like its own character. I feel like the tension and comedy is such an interesting combination for this show. And like Seth Rogen brings his signature charm as the lead, but it's the stellar supporting cast that he's surrounded by that truly steals the show. And, you know, the meta nature, as I was mentioning, of the story with this workplace set in Hollywood, it just adds a layer of both humor and authenticity. And I think if you're working in any industry, I think you can relate to some of the personalities or and whatnot, but in other ways you might not. But it's an interesting peek into how people deal with, you know, some of these situations, and it does feel exaggerated, but it never feels like it's so exaggerated that it's not believable. It's always hilarious. It's always believable. And I think that real life inspiration that comes from Seth and Evan's experience shows an edge of authenticity that I think is rare in the industry. I think it's actually rare. I think sometimes they probably want to kind of, you know, lean into it, but not necessarily too much. But I think if you're a fan of, like I was saying before, if you're a fan of Seth and Evan's past work, I think this is what you're getting, and it delivers in all the right ways. So yeah, it's the studio earns it's a solid 5 out of 5. It's entertaining, it's insightful, it's just genuinely funny. It's a genuine good time, and it's everything I want from a show about Hollywood. In all honesty, it's everything that I would want from a show. So yeah, 5 out of 5.
I think we could have probably just given our scores right
at
the top.
Yeah.
After the first paragraph we would have said or whatever, people are like, oh, they really like this one. And it's true. This show had me like laughing and smiling all the way through. Even when I was like getting the stress sweats at times, but I think that's a testament to how invested I was watching this show. I really truly cared for these characters and what they were going through, and I think this show does a great job of, it really does highlight what Seth Rogen does well, but you don't necessarily have to be the biggest fan to appreciate his character.
Correct.
And I think
Yes.
I think one of the strongest things it does is it doesn't bog itself down by having like unnecessary bad guys. There's no antagonist that our characters are like constantly working against, unless that antagonist is the real life struggle of finding a balance between high profits and making art that means something to you. And that's such a real message that these characters are trying to convey throughout the show. But it's never overly sappy. It's never overly ass kissy. It's funny. It's raw. It doesn't hold back any of its punches. It's a critique while also like this impassioned plea for movies. I'm honestly starting to wonder if Apple just like they're just gonna lose money forever making incredible content,
I
because
think
the whole show
yeah. Mhm.
the whole show is about like, please go to the movies and support movies and keep this industry and the joy of seeing movies in theaters alive. And they've done this through a streaming show on a streaming platform that's losing billions of dollars. Like, it's just so wild to me.
I think that's a byproduct though of the industry, right? You have to spend money, right, to make content, and I think that return on investment isn't there. I think the notoriety is there. I think the attention to their work is there. I think where it matters, it's there. And I also think that, I don't think it's in the streaming industry's intent to just stop people from going to the movie theaters. It's just a new offering that people have leaned into a lot more. And this idea of Netflix and Apple and Amazon with MGM, and the list goes on with streaming and streaming and studio relationships. Warner Brothers, yet another one. They want their movies in theaters for that experience, and they want to do it. And I think that allowing them to do that with their products, with their films, really does make sense. And it also gives them more options to be considered elsewhere. It just has a home at the end of the day, right? That isn't necessarily a DVD or just a bonus disc. They should still make those things. I do agree with that, but there's a dedicated home for that Apple movie that is playing in theaters. I believe F1 is an Apple and Warner Brothers partnership, right? So there is that mentality in the industry. But to the point of what you were saying about losing money, it's like Netflix was in the red most of the time in relation to content being spent. Like, I think they call it content debt, right? Is what it is. And I think that a lot of what Apple is probably shouldering is that. But they can't deny that they're getting such great, like, they just wrapped Severance, the most, like, one of the biggest talked about shows, one of the most successful shows on their streaming platform, and people are still talking about the finale. And this is a great show to kind of follow up. It's entirely different from Anything and Everything, but it still has that artistic, stylistic approach that feels like elevated television. It feels like prestige television, right? Like, it just has that quality to it, and that attention that Apple has been kind of using as they curated their work for their platform. And we talked about it years ago when they started, just what they were offering and how it felt different. So yeah, I think you're always gonna lose money. Like, honestly, I don't know how you're going to gain, because people are going to fall off.
That's fine. Their loss is our gain, because it's crazy that the best movie, the best example of how when there's passion and creativity, when there's talent and skill at so many levels behind and in front of the camera, it's crazy that the best representation of what truly makes a great movie is a show about making great movies. It's just crazy that this television show is such an amazing look at the true art of making terrific films. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Easy 5 out of 5. This is incredible, frantic, a pulse pounding laugh riot that I can't wait to watch again and hopefully see more of in a season 2. But with that, production on our spoiler-free review for the studio is wrapped. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and leave us a glowing review. If you don't, we will never greenlight your little passion project. We can't wait to hear what you think about this insane, zany show. Have you watched the first 2 episodes and are looking forward to more? Or you can get back to us when you've watched all 10 and are as blown away as we are. You can let us know what you think at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that feels a bit like overdosing on mushrooms when all you really wanted to do was throw a party and make people think you were cool, you can reach out to us on our socials. J-Law, where can they do that?
Well, they can reach us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric. You can also check us out on TikTok at wearegeekcentric.
The first 2 episodes of The Studio are available now on Apple TV Plus, with a new episode releasing every Wednesday. Again, a massive thanks to Apple TV for giving us a chance to check out this season ahead of release so we could let you know that it is more than worth rolling out the red carpet for. As always, we have a ton of other great content to check out. We have our spoiler-filled review for Severance Season 2 and our spoiler-free reviews for Disney Snow White and Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again Season 1. We have our recent Oscar prediction and recap shows. Plus, we have interviews with Buffy the Vampire Slayer's James Marsters, the team that brought us Daredevil Born Again, including the director, showrunner, and executive producer. And speaking of interviews, coming up later this week, we talk with Yellow Jackets composers Anna Waronker and Craig Wedren. And then next week, we have interviews with the Newton brothers and an interview with the cast of Doctor Who. Those interviews can be found at youtube.com/geekcentric or along with the rest of our incredible content wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned for so much more as we spring ahead through 2025. When you want the latest in movies, TV shows, games, toys, and collectibles, and all things geek-centric, let us be the studio that produces your favorite content. Until next time, Justin, thanks for joining me. And as we say, get home safe, guys.
Peace.